My journey has been incredibly painful, dark, and lonely. I was self medicating trauma symptoms that for years I had no idea were impacting me so deeply. Sexual violence, divorce, loneliness, depression, anxiety, and all of these things that so many women in recovery experience, but we don't talk about enough. When I learned that actually what I was experiencing wasn't that I was crazy or something was wrong with me, but that I was experiencing life as a trauma survivor without healthy coping skills, all of a sudden I understood I had experienced some really hard things. And I learned that I needed a safer way to think and live.
All right, what's going on, everybody? That was tonight's guest, Caroline Beidler. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knocks Talks, coming at you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty Number 6 territory, and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. Let's bring in Caroline. Caroline, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you all doing tonight?
I'm doing well. We had a bit of an adventure getting here tonight with the tech, but fortunately your husband is quite well versed, and we handled it, and here we are, and I'm excited. So.
Oh, me too. Yes.
Yes. Is there anything that you would like to say before we jump in tonight?
Well, first off, I just want to say I am thrilled to be here, and you all, I've loved getting to know more about your work and what you do. And I feel like anytime I can connect with someone with a similar heart for spreading a message of hope, amplifying voices in recovery, I'm all in. And I feel this kindredness with you, with your partner, hopefully with your audience as we go along tonight, and just sharing and kind of, telling stories together. So I'm thrilled to be here.
I feel that, sister. All right, without further ado, let's go.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
Okay, before we dive in, I just want to let our viewers and listeners know that tonight's live production is sponsored in part by the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, helping women before, during, and after incarceration, Prairie Harm Reduction, emphasizing local action with national impact, and Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Moms Stop the Harm. To learn more about all our sponsors, visit www.hardknockstalks.com. So, Caroline, we learned a little bit about you in the intro there, talking about some of your experiences as you moved forward in your relationship with substances. Why don't we take a step back and talk a little bit about where this all started? Like, for example, was there alcohol in the home growing up? Did you get an early start?
Oh, early start. Yes. So I feel like, there's a memory I have from childhood, and I'm by myself and I'm sitting under this beautiful oak tree that was in my grandfather's backyard and was about 9 or 10. And I was sitting under this oak tree, and I just remember feeling very different, very unsure, very scared, and just in a really vulnerable place.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a can of beer that I snuck from my grandpa's fridge, and I popped that, top, that sound, that crisp, sound, right? And I drank it, and it wasn't like it tasted good, but it didn't taste bad. And it was like something about that moment, that opening of the can and being by myself and taking that first drink felt right. It felt like maybe this was what I had been looking for, to fill some type of void in me, or fill some type of, question about who I was and what my place in the world was, because I had this feeling that just wouldn't stop following me, which was something was wrong with me and that I didn't belong. And so that was my first experience. But, I could tell a lot about, my family history and all of that. I like to focus on that moment, because regardless of the fact that, yes, I did grow up with a lot of alcohol, and, I did grow up with alcohol being shown to me as a type of solution to, you know, whether we're happy or sad or, you know, any of those things, stressed, it was ultimately my action in seeking that out and taking that step and taking that first drink. And so I like to focus there, and I'm grateful today that I can focus there.
And I was going to ask if you could unpack a little bit more about that before we move forward. I'm curious how you ended up under that tree with that beer. Like, what was your thought process? Were you like sneaking, or was this just like everybody else was doing it, so it felt normal to you? Like, were you being bad, or what was it?
Oh, I was really good at being bad when I was young and into my teens and 20s.
How old were you at this time?
About 9 or 10. About 9 or 10. You know, I definitely snuck that. I mean, my grandfather was a person I really looked up to, and when he passed away when I was 12, that was really when my drinking and using, you know, kind of took off. But I snuck out, and I remember this feeling of not only like I don't belong, but also that I'm searching for something. It was just almost this like neurotic kind of obsessive, like searching. Not, you know, physically like I was looking for something I lost, but in my soul almost, you know, it was like I was always looking for something. And so in that, somehow I ended up opening that fridge and grabbing that can, thinking that early on, like I see a 9-year-old now and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a baby.
I have
you know,
a 9-year-old
what is
boy,
it? What
actually.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, to think that as a 9-year-old little girl, that was what I thought I could somehow, you know, solve something by opening and that can and taking that first drink. Yeah.
So did you end up getting drunk that time? Like, was the first time you got loaded by yourself under an oak tree in your grandpa's backyard?
Sounds poetic, doesn't it?
No,
I didn't get, or maybe
it's like a country song or something.
A folk. I know, I was going to say a folk song. Yeah. No, I didn't get drunk at that point, at that moment. The first time I got really wasted was a lot messier. You know, I was a lot messier. I said I was good at being bad as a kid, and I was a couple years older, but was babysitting. And the girl I was babysitting went to a friend's house, and, you know, the parents were like, it's, you know, you can still be here in the house and she'll come, you know, she'll come back. So I was, you know, I don't know, doing what tweens do. We didn't have cell phones back then. I know it's hard to imagine. No social media, honestly.
I can't even imagine. Gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
No phone. I don't remember what exactly I was doing, sitting around looking at, I don't know, a 17 magazine or something. And all of a sudden I, you know, made a call, somehow ended up letting a friend know that I was alone in this house. Well, you let a bunch of tweens and teens know that. All of a sudden, boom, the house is filled. You know, someone had an idea to go through the liquor cabinet. Anyways, long, incredibly messy story short, I got a ride home from her older brother, you know, vomiting out his Camaro window. And it was a nightmare. Oh, I remember that very distinctly.
Something about the Camaro just like paints a picture for, I don't know why, but
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I lived in the country, small town, you know, I am, like blonde hair flying out the window, shower, you know, just, eating bread, you know, just, you know, like that whole scene, which I'm sure everyone can totally relate to. Incredibly messy, incredibly messed up. And you know, the next day I did it again. I went for that drink again.
I was gonna ask, like, did you go to school and brag? Like, were you like proud of yourself?
You know, I wasn't proud of myself. It was more like, I can't believe I got away with this. Well, until I didn't, until my parents found out. But I pulled it off, and, you know, in a sick way, it felt good. That moment before things got really messy felt really good. It was like, oh, wow, all of a sudden I can feel like I do belong, and like there is a place for me, and that I'm loved, and that everything's okay, and that full sense of security and peace using early on, that's what it gave to me. You know, it was my solution until, you know, quickly it became not my solution.
So this was your first time now, and you said you did it again the next day. Like, did it become all about getting loaded right away from that point on?
Basically, yeah. It was like anytime I could drink, I drank as much as I could for as long as I could, you know, sneaking out, you know, all those things, parties in cornfields, and, you know, that went on for a while until, you know, something happened when I was 14 at a party and caused me extreme shame and amplified those feelings of like something's wrong with me to a degree that I needed more than alcohol to get through the day. And that's kind of where you know, where some pretty traumatic things that ended up happening to me. And you know, I don't like to go into a lot of detail, and I really don't feel like I need to necessarily, although I appreciate that, you know, in the beginning of your talk, it's like, this isn't a safe space, this is a brave space, because I feel like, especially as a woman, when we can step into the light really of sharing some of these hard things that have happened to us, we can let other folks know that it's okay to not just talk about like what it was like when we were using, but also what happened to us when we were using, because a lot of, excuse my language, shit happens to us.
Yeah, you don't have to excuse your language. It's fine. You can say fuck too if you want.
Okay, good to know.
Me and that word have a rather unhealthy relationship, I think.
I love it. You know, so at that point at 14, you know, when I was sexually assaulted, raped at a party, that's when my drinking and drug use began, but really when things got really intense and went downhill very quickly for me.
So there was other substances then, and I don't know what the conversation was around those substances in your home growing up, but when you came across them, was there any hesitancy? Was there like, okay, this is not good, you know, everybody's saying drugs are bad and showing the egg cracking in the pan and this is your brain. And I would argue that made me want to do drugs more, actually, you know, people being like, you shouldn't do this. And he's like, no, but why? Because it looks amazing. So,
yeah.
What was it like for you?
Well, you know, I was born in the early 80s, so I remember that extremely well, that commercial, the egg cracking, you know, this is your brain on drugs. And actually, I have a cutout. My parents were so proud of me. In third grade, I won the DARE contest for drawing a picture. When I first was introduced to, it was cannabis. You know, my instinct was not like, I shouldn't do this. Like you said, my instinct was, you know, this is a really good opportunity for me to do something that, first of all, might make me like numb out and not feel, which I was all about at that time. Really anything that could make me not feel, I was like, yes, I'm in. And it was an instant like, wow, this feels like this is kind of the next level. And I was ready to go there. I didn't obviously realize at the time what it would do to my brain development as an adolescent. And that quickly moved from one drug to the next. For me, cocaine was what then really propelled me into a really dark place really quick. And then aside from that, I mean, I could name all the substances that I enjoyed, pretty much anything, you know.
Yeah.
I recently, exactly, more. Yeah. My drug of choice is always more.
So you graduated high school, correct?
Barely.
Yeah.
I barely graduated high school. Yeah, I wound up in addiction treatment, inpatient treatment twice, actually, in high school.
Oh, wow.
Thankfully, I had access to that with my parents' health insurance at the time, and had to move around high schools quite a bit just because it was, you know, even then I was trying to find, you know, a geographic change or some type of cure. My parents were looking for that for me. But I had an overdose in high school and went to addiction treatment for the second time. And after that point, I think that was when at 17, I really started to have people speak into my life words of encouragement. Like, you know, I didn't have to live that way and I wasn't alone. I remember being in addiction treatment and meeting a girl. Her name was Lily. I wish I knew where Lily was today. I hope she's okay. But I met Lily and I just remember feeling like, you know, I'm not the only one. And, you know, Lily and I, we shared a room together. You know, we each had those little twin beds and our teddy bears, you know, I mean, we're still kids, right? But we talked about things like our alcoholism and our drug addiction and our experiences of sexual violence, you know, as we're holding these teddy bears and just needing to connect. Being able to connect and having that opportunity. And that was just that for me was the beginning of realizing, you know what, I don't have to live like this. And maybe there are other people like me. I would like to say at 17 at that moment in meeting Lily is when I found recovery, but that's not unfortunately what happened for me. But I believe that was the beginning of starting to receive some of those messages of encouragement.
Why don't we take a quick break here and look at
Yeah.
some comments? Are you ready?
Let's
She's
do it.
she's petting a cat over there. I don't know if you noticed or not.
Oh,
Yeah. Told you
no.
what
My cat's
happened.
about to jump up any moment.
Yeah.
Cats are welcome, as are dogs.
Yeah.
So our friend Twinkle Badfleet just wanted to say, well, fuck. I just wanted to say it.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Twinkle.
join the
Thank
party.
you.
Yeah.
And our friend Sarah Rutherford would like to say, yes, we need a safe place to talk about the things that happen during those times of drugs controlling our lives. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. We have a wonderful little community here. It's great. We're blessed. So tell us, so you went to treatment in high school. Did you live the life after that for a while? Like, did you go to meetings? Did you try to find new circles of friends or different things to do? What did that look like?
Well, now I look back and it's like, oh, I should have done those things they told me to do, right?
Yeah.
Like you say, go to meetings, do something different, hang out with new kids. But as an adolescent and even as a young person, at early 20 something, when I was in college, it was so hard to find those people, or so I thought. It was so hard. I mean, this is like 20 years ago. It was so hard, and it's a lot. I feel like sometimes we feel like we haven't gotten far enough in terms of addressing addiction stigma. Let me tell you, 20 years ago, it was a lot more challenging. People weren't talking openly about their addiction struggles. The Me Too movement was not in existence. There was a lot more shame around things like sexual violence and mental health challenges. And so while I wanted to be in recovery and live a life that didn't revolve around my obsession with alcohol and drugs, and for me, other things like relationships and all of the other things that I know a lot of women struggle with, disordered eating. That's where I fell into, because I didn't fall into a community. I didn't seek one out. And I think, one of the things that followed me from my early days was that I felt like I had to do things by myself. I had to help myself by myself, which, now I look back on that and it's like, oh, my recovery now is just so much more, it's thriving because I have a community around me. And when I'm struggling, because I still struggle today, I have a community that I can fall back on, but I didn't have that as a young person, in recovery. And it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about helping increase access to things like addiction treatment for adolescents and for college students. And it's also why I wrote my book. I want to increase, community awareness about these issues and the need for more support services and community, recovery community.
So what finally did it for you? I mean, I'm sure there was a window of time that had passed there between when you left treatment as a teenager and to where you entered into recovery. But like, what was it, like a pinnacle event that brought you into recovery, or was it just a series of events or a thought process? Tell us about your journey to the time you chose to enter recovery.
Well, I would say it was definitely a series of events. And I think from, 17 till 28, so 11 years of substitution with different substances and harm reduction and, a lot of struggle, but still always this searching and kind of on this road of I want to get better and I want help. And it wasn't until I was 28 years old. I just celebrated 12 years living in recovery in January. So I was 28 and I started going to an outpatient treatment center that had a recovery community mentorship program where people who attended the outpatient treatment center would come and support other people who are struggling. And at that time I had strung together, a couple months in recovery, and I show up at this outpatient treatment center and they said, well, you've got 90 days or 4 months or whatever it was at the time, not a lot of time. They said, why don't, would you like to be a mentor here? Would you like to help other women who are struggling? And I was like, are you joking? I am a total mess, and I've struggled with this for years, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And the director of the clinic, Shelley Dutch, who is just such a dear friend of mine today, said, you have a story to tell and you have an experience that can help someone else. Like, you didn't go through all of this struggle and all of this challenge. You didn't open that beer, when you were 9 years old and puke out of a Camaro and, overdose at 17. And like,
even she brought awareness to the Camaro. Like,
I had to bring it back there. You didn't go through all of these really hard things. And, I'd laugh about it. I'm not telling you all the hard things, right? There's a lot more. But she was like, you didn't go through all of this for nothing, that there's a purpose in your pain. And I needed to hear that so badly. And she spoke that to me at just the right time. And so I started mentoring at this clinic. And I also started, going to meetings and hanging out with sober people. And I started learning things like how to trust someone, how to have a healthy friendship, how to be a friend. It was just some of those like really elemental things, those foundational things that I never learned. When you start using drugs and alcohol, basically as a child, I mean, looking back, it was like I was pretty stunted emotionally. And I had to learn some of those just like basic things. And once I was able to kind of get to a place of, wow, I can open my heart again. I don't have to have my heart closed. Something beautiful happened. And that's when I really believe that I found recovery, and that recovery found me. And, the other piece of that, like the way that I'm talking might sound like, this all was like me doing this, but in my story, my journey is a lot about my connection with the higher power, and who I call God, and I'm happy to talk more about that. But I believe that, God worked something in me for my good so that I can give back. I could give back at that point, and then I can, continue to do that today.
So a couple of things that you've said have sort of cued a question in me. You said that you felt like you had to do everything by yourself. And something else that you said about using substances early on. But the thing I wanted to ask you is, do you think that using substances early on made you feel like you had some control over your perception of the world?
That's a great question. Absolutely. I mean, I think for me, not understanding that a lot of what I was doing through my drug use was actually my own attempt at creating a coping mechanism for myself. I was self-medicating for a really long time because I didn't realize that what I was experiencing was actually undiagnosed trauma, trauma symptoms. And I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder at 30 years old. So this is 2 years after I got into recovery. And at that point, it was just like, wow, something really clicked for me. And all of a sudden I made sense to myself. It was like, wow, I'm not crazy. I was never crazy. Like, I'm not this incredibly broken person. Yes, I've experienced these things, and I'm a human. So we all kind of have this like brokenness about us, right? Regardless of what we've been through. But I'd been through some really challenging things, and I was basically, you hear about fight or flight or freeze, these responses that people have sometimes. My body was always on high alert. I had no way to down regulate all of that, like really heightened stuff from post-traumatic stress. And so, yeah, I was self-medicating. So it was a beautiful thing when I was able to start learning more about, why I was the way I was, and, still am today. And, and I still live recovery. It's not that all of a sudden I'm cured, like everything's better. Yeah.
So let's look at a few more comments. I gotta, let's do that. I was going to try to write something down, but that's not going to work out right now. So anyways, let's see. What do we got here? We've got Cindy. Thanks for the comment, Cindy.
Yes, thank you, Cindy. Cindy says, I am blessed with my sobriety and I had horrible things happen to me while I was using. I never went to treatment, but when I walked away from the person that was supposed to love me, my abuser, and the person giving me the drugs, I was able to break the chains. I found freedom.
Mm. Oh, Cindy, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And Rebecca Riley says, 20 years ago, society still thought if young girls drank, etc., and got sexually assaulted, they were just looking for trouble, like it was their own fault. So true.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And Harmony Park says, I was in and out of recovery. I had 13 years at one point, then more tragedy and more tragedy. Staying clean and sober for longer than 2 years is near impossible now. Age 51, and now I am in the recovery life again.
Mm-hmm. Welcome back, Harmony. Welcome back.
So, Caroline, tell us what it was like. Now, you have alluded to it being very freeing to, like a light switch came on for you when you made these realizations that you were self-medicating. What was it like the first time you faced that trauma? Like when the veil fell and there it was, and you're staring back at yourself. What was that like?
Whew. I have to take a deep breath. Even just thinking about that moment because it was so intense. Like, when you spent years not feeling and then all of a sudden you stand and you face that and you finally allow yourself to feel something, it's tough. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
No,
it's
please
tough,
don't.
but you know what? That moment of hard and real and tough and staring that in the face, the other side of that is freedom. And there is so much joy and power in that. So I guess I would encourage anyone who might be feeling a nudge of like, hey, maybe there's some other stuff going on that I need to address either in my recovery or maybe you're seeking recovery or not quite there yet. But it is worth it. It is 100% worth it. And so, yeah, that moment where I faced it, I cried, I got anxious, I had panic attacks, depression, like I could list it off. But you know what? The other side of all that, 100% worth it. And I would go through it all again to be at the place that I am today. And the beautiful piece was at that point when it was happening for me, I knew that I couldn't do it alone. And I had a community. And I was willing to take that leap of faith and say, you know what? I'm going to call that woman who has more time than me, who's been through what I've been through, because I trust her and I believe her when she says that she loves me and that I'm lovable and that I'm worth it. And so I did those things that I heard in the rooms, like, reach out when you're struggling and make a phone call, even with that phone is heavy. And I started
10,000
doing
pound
those.
phone. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they don't say that just, to mess with us, right? As newcomers, like people say that because those things work. And it definitely has been working for me.
Yeah.
Gratefully.
So did it get heavier for a while? Like when we talk about having that experience, finally allowing yourself to see yourself, did it get heavier for a while or did a weight come off right away? And did the weight when oh, I'm getting excited now. and when the weight came off, was it liberating or was it scary?
I'd say maybe it was a little bit of both. So, and some other ladies, especially, and maybe, whoever is listening today, tonight, in early recovery, I got in a relationship. So that's one of the things,
You
a
didn't.
mentor at the time. I did. I didn't have a year and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you know what? This guy is,
Yeah.
he's going to save me.
I wasn't
just
going to
the
say
drugs
that,
and
but I was
alcohol
thinking it.
did.
Yeah.
Oh yes, he was going to save me. And
I did
moved
that
in
at
with
90
him,
days,
and
by the
that
way.
was oh,
I only
fun.
did
I bet
just
that
the
was
once
exciting.
though. No, it's like touching a hot stove, but actually this time I learned something from that.
Well, I touched a few hot stoves in recovery.
Yeah.
I won't go into, but
Yeah.
so I was in this relationship and he really was a great guy. But I was not in a healthy place. And so anyways, I had to leave that situation and that was really hard. I had to let go of some things in order to get to a place of healing and to really follow what I knew I needed to follow, which is, the pathway that was going to lead me into, really becoming myself for real, in recovery, really getting to know myself and stepping into my own, which is a process, and I don't think that process is ever over, but it was scary. And I had to do some really hard things, I had to do some hard things, but hey, when we think about what we did when we were using, it's like, really? Like, we can do this. Come on.
Yeah. No, I went to, and I reflect on that sometimes, if my addiction taught me anything, it's that if I want something bad enough, I will have it. Like, I will go to any length.
There you go. Absolutely. We will, won't we?
Yeah. So, you mentioned the rooms. It's safe to say you have experience in the fellowships, the program. Well, your book is called Downstairs Church, so I think the clues indicate here. Did you work the steps?
Yeah, so I try to just protect anonymity, and when I speak more generally about recovery pathways. But I definitely have spent some time in the rooms, and have done those things that were helpful for us. And I would encourage anyone else to do that, because working the steps is just an incredible process of not only getting to know yourself, but I think self-forgiveness, and how to really open ourselves up to connection with God, and with the higher power. And it's a beautiful process.
So tell us about coming to have a relationship with your higher power. Did that happen? For some people, it's like the clouds part. For other people, it takes some time and it's less subtle. How was that for you?
I like the picture of a dance, and I'm not a great dancer. So like, just imagine the most awkward white girl that you've ever seen dancing, just like super self-conscious and all of those things. And I feel like that's kind of how I was at first in trying to connect with God. Even early on, I just had this anger with God about, hey, God, if you're real, I probably wouldn't have experienced those things. There probably wouldn't be suffering in the world. Like, I just had a hard time connecting a loving God with not only my pain, but just all of the pain I saw around me. And so, it was just this kind of awkward, like, I want to know what more about you, but at the same time, like, I'm really pissed and none of this makes sense. So like, what the F are you doing? And so we had this awkward dance for a while. And I feel like, it came to a point of, I remember I was, in my early 20s and super pissed, like just so angry. And I remember I think I was in my kitchen at the time. And I was literally foaming at the mouth, screaming at God. Like, if someone would have been like watching, and hopefully there was no one walking by, they would have been like, this woman is, psychotic. She needs help, which I definitely did. But I was so angry. I was screaming at God, and I talk openly about that today. I think we need to talk more openly about like our true feelings with God. And when I got angry and I got real with God, it was like, I felt God in a whole new way. And God showed up and really like opened my eyes to how much I'm loved, and that He wasn't the author of all this pain and all this horrible stuff that happened to me and that happens to so many other women and so many other folks in the world. But He is there through it, like, there's going to be trouble in the world, but God is there in it. And it was a moment. It was definitely a spiritual experience. And I had a couple of those, and it was like, you know what? There is no denying that there is something greater than me out there. I want to know this something greater than me. And I've come to know that through my faith. I identify as a Christian, and I know for a lot of people, they're like, oh gosh, here we go. Like, I don't like you anymore. And trust me, I totally get it. And I don't like a lot of Christians either. But, for me, what's so beautiful about, Jesus, I'll just say it. And now people are like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving. But no, it's just this idea of love and forgiveness and acceptance and belonging. And all of those things that I have been looking for so long. So, I love pieces of that in my faith. And for me, my faith and recovery journey are so connected. But I'm grateful that I've had a couple of those experiences along the way that were like, whew, so connected. So now, in terms of the dancing, picture, I feel like, I'm maybe not as awkward dancing anymore in terms of my faith and spiritual journey. Definitely need some work though still. So I don't know, maybe lessons. I'm actually unrelated. I'm trying to talk my husband into doing some ballroom dancing lessons. Have you all done that? I don't know.
No, but
I have tried to talk him into it in the past.
Oh, that had to have been like
you
12
totally
years
should.
ago.
So what? I still tried, and you
We
were
were
like,
high.
hell no. No, we were in like a break or something of
that might be true.
Or something.
I don't remember. But
well, there's no time like the present. There's no time like the present. Maybe this is the sign. I
have something to add to this, though.
Time.
We have recently started learning how to jig. So there's that. What do you call the jig? Is it just jigging?
It's just jigging.
Just jigging.
Yeah. I mean, there are various dances that are jigging.
Yeah.
And then there's various dance steps.
Like we use these
to achieve these different dances and stuff. Like there's the sash dance.
Oh wow.
Sash
I love
dance.
this.
Yeah.
So
it's so much fun.
I'm Métis, by the way. And before we go any further down the rabbit hole, like I'm Métis, and I'm trying to learn more about my Métis culture because I wasn't really raised in Métis culture. And now that we've found recovery and we're so this is a Métis sash. It was given to me.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Y'all should do a show on this sometime because I would totally tune in for that. Watch y'all do the jig.
Oh, no, well, that doesn't really fit in the scope of, well, maybe it does. Anyways, we're going down a rabbit hole. Let's look at some comments.
Moving on.
Yeah, we'll break this rabbit hole with some comments. Here we go.
So, Becky Dawn has our first comment here. She says, I have been a PTS break for a couple of months now. I think that means I've been on PTS break for a couple of months now. And the addict on my shoulder sure wants me to self-medicate. And I'm thankful I no longer listen to that voice.
Right
yes,
on,
Becky. Right on, girl.
And we've got our friend Melissa. Melissa was a guest a few weeks ago, also an author.
Mm-hmm. And she said, you said that so perfectly. On the other side of all the hard work is true freedom. 100% worth the work. We do recover, and the unity is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of strong women in the chat tonight.
Mm-hmm. And Rebecca Riley says, I'm 4.5 months in and starting the steps. Truth, I am reaching deep inside to understand myself. Really helpful. Good for you, Rebecca.
Good for you.
And Cindy Doolin says, I think that we all have had that moment of being mad and screaming at God, but it's not until we submit to him that we start to come to some understanding in some things. I can relate to that.
I love that. That's true.
I just wanted to mention something that I find humorous, for lack of a better word, talking about this screaming at God, and then the love coming. In the depths of my situation, I screamed at God, like, what do you want from me? How can, I need to get out of this mess, And a few weeks later, I found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
Talk about being filled with love, and in a sort of metaphorical way. And she turned out to be the answer to my prayers because services that I was unable to access suddenly became available to me. And I found my way back into the light, as I like to call it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, I love that story so much. And isn't that when we can have those moments of honest, just whether it's anger or, emotion, sadness, grief, but that's like in a human relationship, the way that we connect with each other is when we can be real with each other. Right. And so that's no different than the God of the universe, which is really amazing and a miraculous when you think about it. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I've always considered my relationship with and frankly, I don't even know what to call it, but we'll call it God for the purpose of this conversation. It's more of a partnership, how could all of these bad things happen? Well, we're given free will as far as I know. We can make our own decisions. I don't believe that God can come into my head and start telling me to do things. Otherwise, none of that stuff would have happened, I would hope. But I know that what I've learned is that in Creator's hands, our dark past can become our greatest asset. Do you believe that you are being, your experiences are, you can use them as tools to help other people?
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the comments had mentioned, that it's not just the anger piece or having this emotion, but really submitting. And I know that word can be hard for folks, especially, for those of us who've experienced trauma, but really being willing and having the willingness to open up to what God has for us, and, the purpose that can be worked out through our pain, and through our experience. And a friend told me once that, nothing that I've experienced is lost. Every piece of it, can be used for a greater purpose. And for me, that brings me so much peace and so much joy and so much freedom, really. And when I focus on that, and not to get all nerdy on you all, okay, but there's actually research out there that shows, my husband's a scientist, so he's like all about the research, but there's research that shows that actually people who've experienced trauma, when we feel that we have a purpose, we are a lot more likely to maintain our recovery and our healing when we have, that sense of purpose or that sense of meaning.
Yes.
Like it wasn't all for nothing. It wasn't all for nothing. And to me, that is so key, when I can hang on to that truth that God can use all of that. It means something, and it can mean something to someone else, hopefully.
I had a conversation quite a while ago with a doctor in addiction medicine, and he said, Dan, the best way that I have seen for people to come back from substance use disorder and stay in recovery is to find something fulfilling and meaningful to do in their life.
Yeah.
That's, and that's, it doesn't get any geekier than
that. Well, I don't have all those letters behind my name, but I could speak from my own experience. And yes, 100%. That's true. Yeah.
And as can I, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about what I mentioned, that drive that we have. If we want something bad enough, truly we will have it. And if we can bring that, and everybody wants to feel better. I mean, that's not a defect of character to want to do things that make us feel better, right? So when we take that toxic relationship away and point that desire to feel better and to do good in the right direction, we become unstoppable. And that's a fact. There's nothing that we can't achieve. We got a comment coming in here from Adam. Adam, thanks for joining the conversation tonight.
Adam Hoover, and I love this comment. Not that I don't like everybody else's comments, but this one.
Everybody's
this
like,
one, yeah. We're never coming again. No, but I like how this, because I think like a lot of people struggle with this whole identifying God. Like when you go into the rooms, they talk about God, however you identify. I struggled horribly with that. So I love how how he puts it into a different kind of perspective here. And he says, I had to change my understand of what a higher power means to me before I could admit that there was a power greater than myself. For example, the power of a mother's love. There is real glory in surrender. It's very well done.
Thanks so much, Adam. Okay. So you wrote a book. How far into your recovery were you when you decided that you should become an author? Like you don't have any prior experience with writing. Is that right?
Well, so I've actually been a writer for a really long time, and just something that was very personal. It's always been an outlet, even when I was struggling in active addiction, but nothing ever that was, public or that I shared with anyone. But there was always just this creative spark in me. And when I wrote, even back then, like I just felt what I think now is more of a connection, with God, with my higher power. But I could feel God smiling almost, it's like, when you do that thing that you feel like maybe you were meant to do, maybe for you, it's the show, and maybe for someone else out there, it's being a mom. And, for me, it's definitely being a mom too. I love my kiddos, but also, writing. And so, it was something I did privately for a really long time. And, fast forward, 2020 hit. I don't know where you all were when that happened, but I started struggling, in recovery, and I started struggling with some of my trauma symptoms again. And I started seeing a counselor, and she helped me realize that, yeah, there's a lot feeling out of control right now in the world. And it's really probably pretty natural that you're having some trauma symptoms resurface. And so I had to do some really deep digging and up my recovery program quite a bit. And at that moment and that during that time, I just felt this pull to that creative outlet again. And I started writing, and I told myself, you know what? I'm going to write a book in November. I don't know if you all have heard of Novel November, but I don't know, it's like a thing in, like there's Dry January and all these things. I don't know. There's so much weird
November.
social media stuff.
Sit down and write
Novel November. Let's just write a novel. Yeah. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And I did it. It felt,
you wrote it
felt
in a
right.
month?
And in a month. Yeah.
Wow.
And I talked to my husband, and well, the first version it would take, this writing is like recovery. It's a process. So no one will ever see that first draft, but I talked to my husband, and, he was like, I said, should I try to do this? And he's my number one fan. He was like, yeah, if this is really something you want to try to do, like, let's do this. And so, again, that sense of purpose, it was like, it felt right, and it felt like the right time. And so all of these doors, what's interesting is, like, I started making these decisions that I was going to follow this author journey, and all of these doors started opening. And so for me, it was kind of like undeniable that, and some affirmation that, this is the right step for me right now. And yeah, so my book is coming out actually next week on the 28th. So I'm so excited about that. And I'm hoping that, my hope and prayer throughout the whole process has been that if it speaks to one woman and helps one woman's life in some, even if it's, whatever way that is, that all of this work has been worth it. So I just try to stay grounded and focused on that. And that ultimately, just as in recovery, it's ultimately not about me. And the minute that it becomes about me, I'm in trouble. So I try to stay grounded in that too, that it's about being of service and being the hands and feet of, I believe the God that saved me, and that continues to be my friend every day. So yes, here it is, Shameless Pug, Downstairs Church, finding hope in the grit of addiction and trauma recovery.
So are you scared? Like, are you nervous that it's going to come out?
Well, people have... Yes. People have been reading early copies of it, and it's an interesting thing too. And because what you all do is a very artistic, creative thing. You're producing this work of art, that's going out into the world. And so there's a measure of this need to be vulnerable in that. That's kind of scary. It's like sitting in a meeting, maybe in a town that you don't know, anyone in, and you're sitting in a meeting. It's like, yeah, you feel comfortable there because it's a meeting, but at the same time, you don't know anybody. So you're like, what if I say something someone thinks is weird? So I have to let go a lot of that, like, self-conscious, like, yuckiness and messiness, but that's when it becomes about me. So I'm just trying to stay grounded. I'm a little worried my parents are going to read it, so that's going to happen, but hopefully there's no fallout there. But no, I'm hoping that it speaks to someone and moves someone.
See, I'm on the other side of the spectrum. If people don't think I'm weird for more than a couple of days, I start to worry. Like, what? But I can certainly relate to what you're saying about being vulnerable. Like, I make all the memes for our page. Like, those come from my soul. Like, of course I get inspiration from other places, but when I make those memes, they are expression of myself, and I put them out into the world. And and the same with the reels. Like, I make reels almost every day, talking about trying to motivate someone, trying to inspire someone, trying to comfort people in some way, right? So, and then I'll make one, I'll think it's just fire that speaks to me deeply, and it'll get like 5 likes, and there's part of me like, well, I thought that was going to be a banger, but but then but then I get comments, right? Like, people will inbox me and they'll be like, I thank you for this meme, or thank you for this reel. It really spoke to me. It got me out of a dark time. And then not unlike what you're saying, I have to bring it back and I have to check myself, check my privilege, and like realize that, okay, well,
Yeah.
if 1 or 2 people, if 5 people liked that, like I affected 5 people's day. That's beautiful.
Right.
You know?
Right. Isn't it
So
though?
it
Yeah.
is, but it's like a constant thing for me. And I don't know if you can relate, but it's like, as soon as I have something, I want something more, like as soon as I achieve something, I'm already looking up at the next thing. So, what's next for you? This book it's written, it's coming out. The freight train cannot be stopped. It's coming. So what's next?
Well, that's a great question. I think I'm hoping for a little bit of downtime after, there's a lot of events and different things coming with this. And so I'm hoping for a little bit of downtime and just kind of get grounded in actually being able to do just some writing again, spend some time with my family this summer. I also have a day job, so there's that. So I work for an organization called the Association of Recovery in Higher Education, actually where we work with some schools in Canada, but I get to work with professionals in the collegiate recovery space, and so connect with that youth recovery and those 20 somethings. And I love that because, that's a period of time that it was important that I could have accessed some of the support that I see campuses have now. So I get to be a part of that today. So I'm hoping to just kind of ground into some of that rest piece and just continue to focus on collegiate recovery sphere. And I don't know, I might have another book coming out. We'll see. There might be an announcement.
November's coming.
In the next couple of years. Who knows? November, right? Exactly. November is coming.
So when you work with these youth, do you use your experiences to build rapport with them?
Well, so as I'm a membership and outreach manager, so for this association, so unfortunately, I don't have as much one-on-one contact with the college students, but I work with the people who work with the college students. So, and a lot of those folks are, younger, and they're early, mid, to late 20s, and they work one-on-one with college students. And most of the folks we work with are in recovery also. So I get to kind of at the program level have connection and help help these different programs and connect with other people who are interested in collegiate recovery.
We've got a few more comments here, and then I think we will have some closing thoughts, and
great,
call her a night.
Okay, our first is Twinkle Van Fleet. Thanks for your comment, Twinkle. She says, I used to believe my purpose was in the decades of advocacy work I did. Sorry, I blundered that a little bit. It's not. It wasn't. It's love God, love people. My purpose has yet to begin.
Oh, that's beautiful, Twinkle. Thank you.
And Angela Everson says, currently working through past traumas and finding my true purpose. Hard conversations with higher power and what is the next right thing for me to give back to help others through my lived experiences. This has been a great show. Thank you.
Oh,
very welcome,
thank you
Angela.
for being here, Angela.
And Melissa Gissy Witherspoon says, I'm so glad you decided to share your writing with the world. Using your gift is not only cathartic, but brings hope for others.
Caroline, maybe you might want to connect with Melissa. Melissa. If you look on Facebook, search up Sober Now. She's an author, maybe not unlike yourself.
I would love to. I want to say also, just briefly, if anyone who's listening tonight wants to connect, I'm sure you've tagged me in the post and things like that on socials, but please reach out. I'd love to connect. And especially there was one of the comments, the woman talked about being kind of stuck in a PTSD kind of situation right now. I would love to connect, and that is really where my heart's at. So please feel free to find me online on social media, direct message me, please.
And Onyx Knight, thanks for your comment, Onyx, says, recovery has many coping skills. You have to find what works best for you. Just like addiction, you know what's not working for you. Beautiful. Thanks so much, Onyx.
Okay, Caroline, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to speak to?
Well, we touched on it a little bit, and Can I be like a book nerd and read a quote? Not from it's from my book. It wasn't me writing it though. It's a quote that I quoted in my book. That sounds even more nerdy, doesn't it? I have to read this. That's all I'm going to say. Okay.
Okay, read it.
And this is from Anne Morrow Lindbergh. If suffering alone taught, all the world would be wise, since everyone suffers. To suffering must be added mourning, understanding, patience, love, openness, and the willingness to remain vulnerable. And I think, when I was thinking about, this show tonight and just preparing, this idea of vulnerability and being open to letting other people know us, and to be seen. I know people say that, I see you, I at first I was like, oh, that's so annoying. But now I really love that. It's like, I feel like in recovery, we have this ability to kind of step into being seen and being known, which for people like me and my experience it was really tough to do. It was really tough to let my guard down. And so I think, I want to emphasize that beauty that can come and that freedom that can come from being vulnerable and being real.
And with ourselves.
And yeah.
Not only with other
Absolutely,
people, but
yeah.
like coming to know ourselves, putting the boundaries down within ourselves to, find some level of acceptance for some of the things that happened. So, yeah.
Absolutely. When we can be real with ourselves, with God and with others, it's amazing.
Yeah. So, you are your link to, I believe, your Facebook page is in the description, but where else can people find and connect with you? In case people don't feel like going and looking in the description.
Oh yeah, sure. So I love Instagram, love hate Instagram. I'm at Caroline Beidler _official. You can just kind of search Caroline Beidler and I should pop up. And also visit my website, carolinebeidler.com. I've actually got a free chapter of my book on there that you can get. And I just, I'd love to connect, really any way you can find me. My email address, everything's through my website as well, carolinebeidler.com.
Awesome. Okay, Caroline, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for sharing some experiences with us and some things you've learned along the way. And we'll let you go. Take care, my friend.
Thank you so much.
All right, if you're getting something out of what we do here, you can find all our audios on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, or live and interactive right here on Facebook or YouTube. Thanks for watching. Take care, my friends.
Hey, this is Hard Knocks Talks.